GameMarx.
Welcome to GameMarx, the podcast for Xbox Live indie games and development. GameMarx, where gamers control the means of production.
Hey everyone, welcome to the show. All three of us are here tonight. Games we've been playing recently. I've been playing the Wordpress game.
The Wordpress game.
and like Spec Ops: The Line and Walking Dead.
You don't win.
You don't win. Like I'm convinced that WordPress is a series of disappointments. And I'm not blaming, like, let me set aside the product WordPress. The product WordPress is great. It's not the problem. It's the ecosystem around it of, like, you're in this, like, death spiral of, like, okay, I need it to do this. Surely there's a plugin that does that. Here's a couple. This is high rated. Let me install it. Doesn't work. Go to the forums, Google, spend hours, realize the developer hasn't posted in a year, right? Finally find the part of the forum where people are like, what the fuck, this is unsupported, you know?
The great thing is...
Try some crazy guy in the forums patch on line 157, you know, but it doesn't quite look right anymore because, you know, that was for a different version. Fuck it, uninstall it, and then just go on to the next one and repeat the whole cycle. The whole time thinking, like, I should have just fucking wrote this myself. Like, at this point, I think I'm learning how to write a WordPress plugin by debugging them.
And the great thing is, you can write one, and it will almost do what someone else wants to do.
Mm-hmm.
And
that's why I'm thinking of, like, when I put it out there, it's just going to be like, Mike's WordPress plugin. What is Mike's... And the feature bullet will be, does the shit that Mike needs. That's it. That's the whole plugin. If you don't need the exact shit that Mike does, sorry, I don't care. No, I grabbed a YouTube syndicator plugin. Automatic YouTube
Like it'll automatically pull the video and post it? So
it'll go to your YouTube, go to these different playlists that you put in, pull in the playlist, map it to a category, make a post out of the video. So it embeds YouTube, puts the text in as description, fills in, you know, details. Doesn't work out of the box. Completely non-working. Like, set up all this, hit that, hit import, and it goes importing from feed, and it puts the URL for the playlist, and then nothing. And you can click the URL of the feed and find out, well, there's the feed. And then I get into parsing his shit, and he's pulling, I don't know if you ever worked with YouTube API. The YouTube API has an ID field for a video, and that is not the field that you want. You want the video ID. ID is like 2008 :youtube.com : like it's all this RESTful shit, right? The video ID is that little V equals thing. That's what you want. And that's what all the other methods are going to take.
I've messed with embedding it, and it seems like there are like 3 or 4 different formats that get thrown around, and they're not the same.
So they were taking the wrong ID field. The fucked up part was, right below when I find that line of like, well, that's the wrong field, is commented code that takes it from the right field. Like, I don't understand why that's flipped around. So, I got like this one post that I did and then like no response in a couple days, and I'm like, hey, you know, I found this looks wrong, I changed this one field, like it was commented below it. I don't understand how this worked for anybody, because that is not the API method, you know? And then it's supposed to make, thumbnails. Post thumbnails, like official WordPress thumbnail posts, thumbnail images from the video thumbnail. And it's like, that's not working. Like, cause our theme renders the thumbnails, and it's like, they're all broken. They're just blank. And I go in the database, and I start nosing around by, making a post with a thumbnail, and then seeing that it sets this _ thumbnail ID in post meta to the ID of a post, because in WordPress, everything is a post. An image is a post is a post, a page is a post. Everything goes to the post table. And then you kind of have to...
even images in your gallery? Or is that a separate...
Everything is a post.
Well, I know, like, when you post stuff to your gallery, it can make another...
Galleries are posts, images in galleries are posts. at some point, like, they were just like, you know what, you'll just use, like, these, like, you look at the MIME type. Or, like, is attachment, and it's attached, this is a post that is attached to another post, and things like that. So that's basically your options. Your options in the WordPress are make it a post type, make it metadata on a post, okay? So the metadata on the post is the ID of the post that is actually an image that is the thumbnail. What they're putting in, this plugin puts in that field, is the fucking YouTube ID. VQXY7Z square, whatever, you know, all that shit?
Yeah.
Like, what the fuck? Like, how would that ever work? That would never work, right?
It would under possibly a different version of the API or different version of WordPress, maybe? I'm guessing.
That WordPress would take that out and go, well, that is clearly a YouTube video ID, so I'm going to go to that YouTube video ID API, get the thumbnail
Or maybe
feed.
they have another plugin that they're expecting. Can you set dependencies in WordPress plugin? Like, this plugin requires this one?
So I fixed all that.
Is there feature stapling?
I fixed all that shit. And there was no code to... All it did was insert that ID into that field. There was no code in that entire thing. No. You're going to have to get the URL. There are multiple thumbnails and different resolutions, and also each thumbnail option comes back in the API as well. So you'll have like 7 or 8 thumbnail choices in the API. There was no code to, like, select one of those. So I wrote code, go through, find the highest res one I can find, download it to the server, put it in the content folder, add it to the gallery, attach it to the post, and then you can set the thumbnail metadata to that attachment and set all that. And I put all this shit up on Pastebin. I'm like, now since I've edited this one file, here's my edited file. You know, I had updated it, and I just basically put the comment. I put the comment, like, if, you know, here it is on Pastebin. If you don't know what to do this, you should not be messing with it. That was my way of basically saying, like, if it's broken for you and you don't understand programming, I am not answering those questions, right? Like, this is beyond the go to line 159, change it, put a comma here, and you're done.
That's the worst. Because I remember installing some PHP BB patches like that, and it was the worst thing ever. Because you knew, like, you did not want to install mods because you knew that eventually you were going to have to upgrade.
The other game I've been playing is a Super Nintendo game. Not games on... Well, I have been playing games on the Super Nintendo. Yeah, I guess we should just mention that. We recorded Link to the Past 2.5 hours so far.
Yeah, 2.5
Quite a bit for me to edit and upload. So we're getting into the rhythm of I'm going to call it Wasted Youth. It's going to be Mike's Wasted Youth or something. Will be me playing the games that I missed that are seminal games, you know, in the Super Nintendo era, because I never owned one. And also up on the site now, or not on the site, on the YouTube channel, is Daddy Made Us Play. And I've got a couple Metroid ones up. I got another Metroid one to post, and I've got Contra to start rolling up as well.
Did you do multiplayer Contra?
Yeah, I had them play together.
Okay.
Because I was thinking, like, what to do next. I'm surprised that they have not played Super Mario Bros. 3.
Really? That's a good one to do.
And, yeah, it'll be a good one to do, because I was... On Metroid, it's very clear they're struggling with the platforming. And I was debating, like, should I give them a non-platformer next, or should I give them something to kind of ease them into platforming? And, of course, with Contra and the Konami code, like, they could, you know, run through it a little bit more. Interesting enough, I don't remember this, but Rachel reminded me, like, I played that with her at one point. She remembers that, so I must have put in the code, and it's like, here, you can play with me, and, you know, we'll run through the game. So I got that to upload in the Link to the Past, and then we'll figure out a game with Cicely here, and I'll start doing a playthrough of me and Cicely on some SNES game. I don't know what that's going to be yet, since you called dibs on the Final Fantasy.
Well, we could all sit down and do... Like, I don't have to be in on all of them, but I would like to be in on a few, just because, you know...
Well, I think they'll just be like, this is the one I'm playing with Dylan, this is the one I'm playing with Cicely.
Okay.
So that I don't have to, like, time it to get all 3 of us together, because that'll be rough. But obviously, even, you know, I'll get moments with Cicely in the evening after Jasmine lays down and go to bed. So anyway, got a Super Nintendo. Ooh. This is the second one that I have. I have 2.
Okay.
So, you may recall the eBay story from last week, right?
Yes.
We got the unit in. I think there's power supply problems, right? Trying to get a power supply. Okay, so go all over a 50-mile radius. There are no fucking power supplies that are not coupled with another Super Nintendo. And this one was at McKay's, and I don't know how well the lighting works here on that, but it's sitting up in McKay's, perched, so as you can see it, it's perched like this, leaning, standing up. And I'm like, this is the one that looked, I think I said on the other podcast, looked beautifully gray. Like, this is not yellowed at all.
Except...
And when they took it down, now while they took it down, before they took it down, I went in there and so here was the logic. Can't find it. I had one more store to check, okay? I checked that store, they don't even have a controller, alright? So, I was like, I'm gonna go to McKay's, I wanna buy that $64 one, because it's only like $4 more than the cheapest ones that I found. And it was beautifully gray, and it wasn't yellowed, as I knew at that time. And I will get the original power supply and original video cables that it had, plus another original controller. And I'll hook all that original stuff up to the one I bought off of eBay. Now, McKay's in our town, I'm pretty certain this unit's going to work. Because they offer 10-day cash back if it doesn't work, and they test their stuff
extensively.
That is behind the counter. The stuff that is not behind the counter...
Is it scratched?
Whatever, yeah, you know... They'll still take it back, but they're not... Like, I looked at the bottom of some of those NES games, like, I picked up the cartridge, and, like, oh, this might be... Wow, that is epic, what's growing inside this NES cart, So... I'm like, all right, I'll backup plan. And if I bring it home, right, I'll know I'll have a working SNES at that point. And if I hook it up to the power supply on mine and it doesn't work, then I have 7 days left to do the eBay buyer protection. It's like, I'm just return the damn thing outright. Fake power supply, fake controller, fake AV cables, or aftermarket power supply, AV cables, AV controller. Everything was aftermarket on that damn thing. Got screwed on that deal. Okay? If you're eBaying a NES unit, make sure it says original power supply, original AV cables, original controller, right?
Star.
Yeah, otherwise you're going to wind up with some knockoff shit. And, so, if it doesn't work, it goes back. And I'm within my buyer protection, and I've got this documented list and all this horrible thing, and where they claimed they were going to send a game to make up for screwing up the order. And
they didn't send a game.
And they didn't send a game.
Nope. It was barely packaged.
And how they lied about the dates that they shipped it, So I'm like, I'm fine on the eBay protection program if there's a question from eBay here, right? Or it could work, and I could know it's actually the power supply. And I got it home and I hooked it up, and it is 100% the power supply. When I put in the proper NES power supply, Star Fox did not have the color bands going across the screen. Mortal Kombat and Street Fighter 2 that wouldn't come on at all, loaded up perfectly and played. Zero problems. It is 100% the power supply. The aftermarket SNES power supplies, you can tell. They say on their output 9-volt DC. Look on the back of your Super Nintendo, it needs 10-volt DC.
Oh, okay.
Interesting.
And that little bit is enough to screw up the machine.
You remind me, because
imagine back then, we're not like at the state. Games at that point ran as fast as the hardware could let them run, right? They weren't clock synced. They just knew what the hardware ran at, and you let it run as fast as you can, and it dealt with slowdowns. So if the voltage is underrun, the CPU's running at a slower clock speed, you're gonna have issues now. Because it's not like, no, I'm calculating that I'm making sure I'm running at a 60 frames per second or 30 frames per second. I run the fastest as the console lets me. And then the gameplay is built off of that. So it makes a lot of sense that that would be the problem.
I wonder if I'm having problems with my power supply on mine. Like, I did set it up to play something several months back, which I never do. But...
And I did go in and eBay another power supply. An original power supply. They run between $15 and $20 on eBay. Just gotta watch on the shipping, man. Someone will be like, oh, I'm $12 and $18 shipping. Like, I hate that crap.
That's a brick. Not a brick, but, it's a large power adapter.
The knockoff is light as a feather. Like, I don't even think that this thing is like clean power going in to the SNES. It's not over there. So anyway, I get this one, and like I'm showing here, you know, beautiful gray. Like this thing, wonderful. But as they set it on the counter, I can see this thing is a two-tone hoopty. You know? Like, the yellow of it is not coming out. Like, you can't appreciate in the video how yellowed this bottom is.
It matches your shirt.
And
Yes, it does. Wow, that's...
yeah, it's extreme, the difference between it. I don't think this is an original, top and bottom. I think this is a repaired
Yeah, I was going to
SNES.
say, what yellows...
Well, whatever yellows it
Like, is that...
would yellow the
sunlight or
top
something?
and bottom.
Evenly.
It does matter the gen. So I know a lot about SNES serial numbers, because one thing I did off of eBay with that unit I got is there are certain games. One of them is Magic Quest. No, what is that? Mystic Quest.
Final Fantasy
Mystic Quest, you can put in and at the menu hit start and select at the same time, and it'll tell you the CPU revision, the PPU revision, the GPU revision, and I did that to verify that unit that I got off of eBay is a late gen model. It's the latest that Nintendo ran off the factory line before making Super Nintendo Minis. Right? Before they started changing the form factor and making the mini style. This
I forgot they did that.
bottom,
We
now
have
also,
one at home.
also the later gen ones, the plastic doesn't yellow as much as the older ones. So this is possibly a late gen top and an early gen bottom. In fact, when I got it in, I flipped it over and I know about all the bottoms, and the layout of the stickers and the serial information, all this confirmed this to be an original run bottom. The bottom is definitely the first run. Even the little, like, extension port piece
that's
of plastic
a
is
different...
gray, like it was somehow lost or something from the original unit and was replaced with whatever unit died they took the plastic from and put this together. And I'm like, wow, this is actually... Not that I think that's any more valuable or any more desirable that this is first gen. I don't think there's any real problems between, like, games and glitches between later and earlier. I don't know if that's the case. But when I'm looking on the back, I'm like, there's some scrawl here. There's some Dremel tool writing, like somebody like this is my SNES type branding. But when I look at it, it says... Property of Western Sales and Rentals. There's a phone number, and then the unit numbers, like, you know, SKU numbers, like, written on here. This was a fucking rental unit. At least the bottom was. This is a Franken SNES whore.
That's so funny.
This SNES
So funny.
has seen a lot of action. Been in and out of a lot of places. Not all the parts are original anymore. But
Well, I mean-
she'll still get you your game. She'll still take care of you. It's working perfectly.
Wow.
So I'm ordering a power supply, and I'm thinking, you know, I don't know what to do at the moment that I've got two.
Okay, if my SNES is not the power supply, and there's no way to get it, is there anyone who does repairs?
It at that point,
Because I was
like,
gonna say, like,
you could just be like the cost of a repair could be the 16
I was gonna
bucks
say
of buying a new power supply.
have my power supply if nothing else. Because what am I gonna do with?
Oh, if it's not your power supply. Well, I have a second one that's going to be in next week. 'Cause I'm
Okay.
like, I can't do anything with the unit without a power supply, and I'm not going to give somebody that knockoff power supply and let them go through the same
Right.
thing that I did. But I don't know what to do with it yet. I may just hang on to it. We may just have two. You know, because we just kind of wound up with two. I've wound up with 4 controllers. You know, through all of this.
I'm surprised you bought as many as you did. Although I guess
no. Well, see, one of them was a controller I picked up because you know I got an original, and this thing, I had an original from Christmas. I had one original already from Christmas when my brother brought that clone system that I had him sent back. And then when I was looking for power supplies, I was in a place and they had the extension cable, right? Which I'm like, I want the fucking extension cable. If I could find another one of those, that is awesome. So they had the extension cable. I'm like, while I'm here, he had a bunch of controllers. I found one that looked nice and went ahead and got it. Because I'm like, I need, 2 nice controllers, and I'm not counting the freaking aftermarket one that we have.
You know what game we need to do? And I've suggested, I think we tried to do this for Chainsaw Buffet, and something screwed up with the recording. Secret of Mana. I have the multi-tap. It's a 3-player game.
Ooh.
Really?
Works perfect.
Wow, yes. Maybe there's
Works
a
perfect for this
3-player...
format.
I had read that on one of those top 30 games you need to play. I was like, there's no way I'm going to be able to get this one. And I moved on.
So how does that work? How do you get a 3...
It adapts one of the ports.
So you could split the ports into 2 and have like a 4-player game?
Well, yeah. Well, you basically, like, the first port, you plug in one controller, and the second port, you plug the multi-tap in, and you get, like, 3 controllers that you can plug in.
Huh.
I think the first port was special, and it did not like multiple reads.
Interesting. I did not know that. I didn't know they made that for it.
Well, I mean, they did a multi-tap for the original NES.
I also picked up the Super Game Boy adapter, so I get my Game Boy games. That'll let me record footage of the Game Boy games, really. Was a reason I'm playing that. And also, let the girls play that. Some of the Game Boy games, I think, are iconic as well. And as far as I know, that thing plays Game Boy and Game Boy Color, I believe. Not 100% on that. I should check that before I go. At some point, I'm going to put on the site for discussion a list. Like, I'll make a news post. I'm kind of going through and getting in my head, and I'm going to, like, list, like, maybe 25, 30 SNES games. And say, like, this is the list that someone needs to play, and let people go in there and say, no, take that one off, put this one on. Like, I may put in there Donkey Kong Country, okay?
Yeah.
But somebody may make a strong case for, you need to play Donkey Kong Country 3. Or, it's like, no, the first Donkey Kong Country was the one that was kind of like, oh my god, it's the one that set off the series. Like, I'm willing to hear those arguments. I would lean towards playing the originals in the series, the first ones in the series. But if there's some crazy gameplay mechanic that got introduced in the third one that became iconic for the series, that's the one that everybody actually loves. I need to know that, and things like that. So at some point, I'm just kind of going through sites, looking at the list and everything. Also, because I need to make this list, because then I just need to start, like, watching eBay and talking to friends, see which ones can I borrow, which ones can I get my hands on, and things like that, and getting these games.
I think I have a copy of Link's Awakening, too, since you've got the Game Boy Color. I don't know if you want to go that far with, like, 2 Zelda games at some point. But
back to back. I may just
not
be
back to back, just... I may
be interested in just
copy.
playing those. Maybe not recording them, but just playing some of the Zelda ones.
I'll have to ask my brother what he still has.
So, alright. Oh wow, some Steg said he found a SNES that is the opposite color.
Maybe you found her sister whore.
Yep. 2 at once. SNES knows about... Stegs knows all about 2 at once.
I guess he does, yes.
Yes,
Rasket says only the original Game Boy. Oh, that sucks. That sucks.
Really? There was Game Boy Color...
Game Boy Pocket,
Game Boy Pocket.
Advance.
And then Game Boy Advance, and then DS.
I do want to say it played some other type of Game Boy. No, there were certain games that were made for the Game Boy, the Super Game Boy. Like,
really?
Mario versus... I think there was a Donkey Kong game.
Like, they didn't play in your Game Boy?
They would play in your Game Boy, but if you played them on the Super Game Boy, they would have, like,
more
actual
stuff.
colors and stuff.
Well, I mean, that might be kind of a relief if it does do Game Boy Color. Because I didn't have a Game Boy Color, and that opens up, like, a whole nother, like, I gotta track down...
I thought that was a very, very short period of time that
those were out? Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, that wraps up kind of my week. Anything interesting happening?
I actually sold off my DS and PSP a while back because I haven't touched them in years. And I ended up buying Dishonored and Alpha Protocol. I've been playing Alpha Protocol. I don't know if I've mentioned that on. Don't know if I mentioned that last time. It's okay. It's an
older one.
Yeah, like it's $5, but it's one of Obsidian's RPGs. It's interesting. It's interesting playing it after playing Spec Ops because it has some of the cover mechanics and, that sort of thing, except it's an RPG. So basically, and it's a little more, it's not quite as, it's more forgiving. So you can run out into the middle of the fight and run and gun if you want, but I don't know. I ended up getting stuck on one of the boss fights, so I don't know.
Any development?
I got a table to work, and it works correctly, and it looks good.
So is that by, what do you mean, like having the items out on the table?
No, I mean the table that it's supposed to fit on. You know how you can put a table down in there, and you're going to put books on it? Well, that's in a special portion of the A layer, and I got it to work, and it filters itself out like it's supposed to, and looks pretty decent.
So you don't walk through the books, is what you're saying? Is that what you're talking about, like got it to work?
No, I mean, I got it to stack how it's supposed to.
So all this is we placed a graphic asset in the game, not like we have a store and you can buy things off the table and there's dialogue and interaction.
No, I got...
Like, you totally could have just, like, gone to Photoshop, mashed the images all into one, and put it up there, and it would look identical. And function the same.
It would function the same, but it would not look identical. It would look like crap.
Why would it look like crap? If you just stacked it up in a photo editor. I don't...
Because it's not... It's one of those auto tiles. You put it down and you can make it as big or as small as you want, and it'll auto grab whichever portion of these set of tiles that it needs to make the shape of the box that you want.
So, you worked a repeating pattern thing. Okay.
That's a little bit trickier. And I made it work.
So you laid a sequence of tiles to make them look like a table.
Correct.
Green Man, due for release 2015.
I hate you so much.
And you are the graphic artist of the team. That is like your thing,
It made me happy, sir. It made me happy.
Well, I'm glad that we've had this moment and we've learned this. And also, it does make me feel good about the investment in RPG makers so that these things are learned. By the way, Sunday is the game, our local Knoxville game design meetup group, and the topic is open, so I'm gonna have you come down and show off your game maker stuff. And not just to like fill for topic, but several of the guys that are there have used Game Maker in the past, and they're constantly asking like, what's it like now or look like now? So even just a guided tour of the tool will be interesting to fill in with that. So, all right, let's get into news here. Real quick, I'm not going to cover in depth, but there's a Deal Spawn article that interviewed George Klingerman and talked to him a little bit about XNA, and I think it's one of the better recaps that come out. I mean, I've read some that like talked about the MVPs as if they had this ultimate power to block any game from getting on the system, and it's like when you read them and you read who wrote it, you're like, I get, I get
suppose
chip on your shoulder.
Depends on what faction you come from, on the forums.
Yeah. So I'll link to it in show notes. It's a good read because it's a pretty good, like, here's kind of like the success and it rolled out, but it succeeded in spite of Microsoft, not because of it. So they never really had their hands around it to use it, which is unfortunate because I think that's going to be key in the next cycle.
Console cycle?
This open platform. If not at launch, definitely once you start getting into year 2 and 3. Like if by year 2 and 3, they don't have Steam equivalent marketplaces happening on their consoles, consoles are going to be in a bad spot.
Yeah.
If not replaced by Ouyas and all that stuff. Talk about the Ouya in a second. I don't know if you read this update. Did you read the Code Hero update?
No.
Guy sent the update. So both you and me backed this project, and
I think I backed it for $1 just to get a copy. So
yeah, it was like very little to get a copy, not a big investment in it. And I think this Code Hero is gonna be. I think this is the real first case where we can say like, here's a failed Kickstarter game. Like I think this is gonna be the first, actual significant backers failed to deliver at all. And that's kind of funny because they did deliver. They have an alpha and they have their updated alpha. If you read it and you read the updates and the Kickstarter, he put a big message on there. They ran out of money. Here's where all the money went. They put it together. I think they made a fairly reasonable stab. Basically, all the developers moved in and designers moved into a house together, so they could keep all overhead low and just focus on the game. But after like 4 or 5 months, even $100,000 runs out.
Yeah.
Now they are out of money, so they can't ship the physical rewards too. They can't do the physical rewards. All that money is gone. He does talk about going to PAX and another event that they paid out of funds. I wouldn't say that was a bad call. I mean, they do need press. They do need,
Yeah. Well, in light of
and
when they
success,
went, they didn't know.
Yeah. I mean, they didn't know. Like many gamers of experience would know, they basically bogged down in online code. Multiplayer online code, syncing code, that kind of stuff became very, very complex. I think also a critical mistake that they made is they didn't have a veteran on the team. There was no veteran who was attached to the project who could come in and ship several games. These were not inexperienced, but they were not veterans of game production. They had made, small little games, maybe Game Jam or two, but these were all not long out of college kids.
Basically, you're saying they need someone there as kind of, not necessarily, to provide some project management to go, like, okay,
Yeah, to go like, multiplayer is a huge expense.
It's taking too long.
We need to
throw it out,
ship these things first and get a revenue stream here before we add multiplayer, because the $100,000, $120,000, whatever you have for this is not enough.
Yeah.
And they didn't have that person on the team to do that. Now, the guy's saying, like, there's volunteers who are working on it still, and it's going to ship, and everybody's going to get everything, and if you send him an email at this thing, he'll give you a refund. But all of this has, like, an asterisk that says, when we have money, and we have no money.
Yeah.
So, I think we can call this one a bust. Although, like, it ends up with, like, here's the latest build you can download. We added these features to it.
And, you have to pay $1 to get the build. So, you're not... Most people are not
I don't know
out.
if you do now. I don't know if you can get it now without being a backer, but probably it'll be torrented and stuff. Like, if you want to get it, you can get it. And, it wasn't backing this because I thought it was an awesome game. It was a get this in the classroom, right? Teach kids code. So I want to download the second alpha, see where it got to. It might be just a fun thing to give a kid to play with for a little bit, kind of get them interested.
And that may have been the problem if they were trying to develop this into a full game when really it doesn't need to be.
But at the same token, like, even though it was a bust, I don't know how many people are asking for refunds, but I'm not going to be asking for a refund. I was never, like, that mentality and Kickstarter pushing that, I think, is wrong to begin with. That's saying, like, you're not funding these idea projects. You're funding a store model, of like refunds are what stores do. projects can fail. Now there should be some, like the refund, I guess, like make sure they put an honest effort into it, but
Honestly,
it'll be interesting to
like I've
see.
said before, people don't like the idea of risk.
It'll be interesting to see what goes on from this. Some interesting news this week in that Unity coming to BlackBerry 10, smartphones and Playbook.
That's interesting.
It's interesting because it's like, it doesn't seem like a big market, but I think it says more about Unity than it does about BlackBerry, in that Unity's committed to being everywhere. And that just double down and reaffirms, especially after messing with RPG Maker, that I need to just start cracking into Unity. And I'm looking at doing the next, what's that game jam?
Ludum Dare?
Ludum Dare, yeah. The next Ludum Dare that comes up, I think in April is when that'll be. I'm looking at doing that, and maybe Unity is what I'm going to do. Now, I want to mess with Unity before I dive in, but, I think Unity is where I'm going to go post XNA. I don't think it's going to be Mono Game. Although, I'm waiting to see the next drop of Mono Game, because they're talking about having a content pipeline option and some other things in there, so depending on where that gets to in the next drop, that may say, also, we've got our libraries, which if there's a content pipeline in Mono Game, we could port our library content, X-Spriter and X-Tiled to Mono Game, and then those have a future. Because right now, what was I going to say? I'm not quite sure what to do. Like, Tiled is updated to 9.0.
Yeah.
0.90. And I'm like, yeah, I should update X-Tiled for these new features. All the while going like, fuck,
what's the point,
Content pipeline is definitely dead. Like, I know XNA will have a future in Mono Game, and your games can be ported over, but like, until I see what Mono Game is doing, like, the explicit nature of how the content pipeline works is a Visual Studio only thing. That's not going to work in Mono Develop. So, Mono Game runs in Visual Studio, but it also runs in Mono Develop. And I figure, like, if you're supporting Mono Game, you should support Mono Develop. So, I will update it. I will find time in the next couple weeks to get X-Tiled updated to the 9.0 features. But yeah, I'm thinking, like, I don't want to keep adding a bunch to X-Tiled until I see what Mono Game does.
Well, okay, now, Mono Develop, there's no guarantee of that, but at least in the newest version of Mono Game, because I downloaded it either this past week or the week before, and just to look at it, just to see what it was like. If you're using 2010, it will create an XNA project, and that XNA project will, with a content project attached to it, it's got a template for content pipeline.
Right,
project,
but you're running it in Visual Studio.
Yeah. It's still usable.
So you install XNA.
Yeah.
And then you use the XNA Game Studio content pipeline to build the X and Bs, at which point Mono Game takes over the X and B.
Yeah, it's still automated, but yeah, you don't have the freedom to kind of move outside of to later versions of Visual Studio or to other versions of other IDEs.
Yeah.
And instantly, I was messing around because I've been messing around with HTML5 some more. You can export tiled maps to a number of different formats, including JSON. So
the exports beyond XML are not core and not officially supported.
Okay.
So, like, he gets around to adding them, but, like, somebody came in with JSON and was like, hey, like, this feature or the terrain or something is not in JSON or something like that, and he's just like, yeah, the XML is the export format for now, and the JSON stuff and all that gets caught up later, it seems.
Yeah, but, the need for that may be minimal, especially in other platforms.
His thing was, like, write a converter, if, like, you really need that, you should convert that. So Notch basically saw that it was going to take $18 million to make Psychonauts 2 and went, didn't realize that Can't quite afford that.
Wait, what? I'm missing something here.
Okay, all right. A while back, Notch tweeted, I'm a millionaire now. Tim Schafer, Psychonauts 2, I want to fund it. Let's do this, right? And then the internet went fucking crazy, right?
Obviously.
And basically, Tim Schafer gets called and woken up with, you've got to check Twitter. Get on Twitter now, and Tim's like, oh shit, we're being sued. And then it's like, no, wait a minute, somebody wants to give me money. And then there was some brief conversation, and I think at that point he told Kotaku, Tim Schafer did, Notch and I will discuss and talk, but just know Psychonauts cost $13 million, so, we don't know on this. Notch tweeted there were other interested parties beside himself. I guess they got to the table and the swag, ended up with like, it would take $18 million to do a Psychonauts 2. At which point Notch went, okay then. And it doesn't look like that's gonna be happening, now or be funded that way. I just thought that was interesting. But I really left that up, point that out because I was gonna bring up more, Double Fine news in that the Ouya in the Cave. The Double Fine Adventure, Reds, is what it's actually called, the game.
Yeah.
Double Fine Adventure is going to be an exclusive launch title for the Ouya.
Exclusive?
With no, how long it can eventually come to other consoles and platforms, but it will be first available on the Ouya console exclusive. So it'll also be on Linux, Mac, and PC.
Okay. I was
yeah. And the Cave will also be ported to the Ouya as well. And I don't know if you've been following the video updates on Red, but the last one basically ends with a meeting of okay, the game you have here that you're building, you don't have the budget for.
Yeah, I think
the company doesn't have the money. So, without saying it, they're like, we're gonna have to cut features, rein things in, at that point of the dev cycle. And this strikes me because Tim Schafer's last thing was, I think on the table is cut features, get more money, and I want to say it was push out the deadline, but that seems like get more money. So there had to be a third option I'm forgetting. Anyway, so Tim talks about how, because it's the Kickstarter project and they've become the poster child of that, to turn and take a publisher, he feels, sends the wrong message, to bring in publisher funds at this point.
It's especially crazy.
Even if it never affected anything of the project, the reputation, and the just oh, so indies can't be on their own. It's he doesn't want to do that. But he says at the end of between the get more money, more time, more budget, or cut features, he's I've been on these, this happens on every game, it's a combination of the three.
But it seems so crazy considering they broke their original estimate by so much.
Yeah.
What they were asking for.
But then their stretch goals, you're just I'm not certain you budgeted for your stretch goals right.
But I don't know that they had a whole lot of stretch goals on that Double Fine Adventure. They didn't have a game.
Need very much.
They didn't have a game when they did Double Fine Adventures. I don't think they had stretch goals.
I think they did add in, they ended up adding in
platforms.
Yeah.
But no, they didn't add features to a game on stretch goals. They didn't have a game. The first videos are them figuring out what the game is. So that's kind of they want to make an adventure game. I think we could make an adventure game for this price, and then it went wildly over, so they did scope it bigger, bring in more of the team, but, it continued to scope bigger, and you don't have a plan when they started, so they didn't have a scope to mail it to, so I don't think the overage is applicable here, because they didn't, it's hard to say that they went over budget when they didn't have a budget to start with.
No, I understand that.
The budget they started with was literally Tim Schafer's going to download some game tools and make his own game. He's going to do it and not bother the team, right? That was the initial worst case scenario. This was kind of what we're budgeting on. And so anyway, he says a combination of the three. I think that's why this showed up, because Ouya definitely needs to get titles, because a console lives or dies by the software the game's available for. Doesn't matter the features of the console, it lives or dies by the support. And unless you're Nintendo, first-party support is not enough, right? You need good, strong
especially if you're,
support. Bringing on them legitimizes the platform, puts some real games onto it, and I bet you there's some money that Ouya is paying to Double Fine for the exclusive. That is the money they need to get the adventure game out.
And they're already,
I think it's a win-win everywhere, because it fucked Sony and Microsoft for a little bit, with their closed-ass platforms. Like, you don't need to go through all that extra money and cert process to get Double Fine Adventure on the console at launch.
And if
Make
it does
work with the controller on PC and call it a day.
Yeah, and if it does really well, they're going to want it anyway. I'm surprised, though, like, given that the Ouya, at least to everyone I've talked to, seems to be kind of this big joke, if that is not a risk for Double Fine, where, they're attaching their name to it so that, if it does flop, everyone, remembers Double Fine being
right, the flop. That's the other thing. There's a line where Schaefer says in there, the future of the company has become staked upon the success of this game. Or maybe he says it like, the future of this company to remain independent.
Yeah.
Like, if this game fails, then we're screwed as a studio, independent, It's gotten to that point. Like, our reputation has gotten sewn up into this game, and everybody's looking for us. Well,
even if they still shopped out to publishers, I'm sure that would be kind of like a red flag.
Yeah,
like,
yeah. Also on Ouya news is, Ouya is going to release a model every year. And Ouya is going to be available in Best Buy and Amazon. In fact, I think they're up for pre-orders now. $99. So Ouya's pushing big and hard. I think they realize their window is before E3. In fact, their window is surprisingly short now, because Sony, rumor, their press event on the 20th, they're going to announce a PS4. And all of a sudden, it's just like, well, I'll just wait till Christmas to get that, versus this little unknown thing, Yeah. And Ouya will get lost in the shuffle of all the new consoles and next generation and Steam Box and next Xbox and PlayStation. And so they got this window right now they need to capitalize on. And it seems like they're doing it right, to the point where I think GameStick is going to be the loser in these Android console. I think Ouya is going to be the Android console that comes out on top here.
Well, it seems like a good idea. Like I mentioned with, when we've talked about Steambox before, it seems like they're taking more of a mobile, Android, iOS device approach if they're doing it on a yearly basis. And, so that you always, if you're really into it, you always have to have the next Ouya so you can run, the higher powered stuff.
On cross-platform stuff, EA has launched Origin on Mac, and they have a handful of titles. I think EA is starting to realize, with Steam going into Linux and strong Mac support, if you're not everywhere, you might as well be nowhere. Like, if Origin's going to be a contender, they really got to start competing. I think it's crazy awesome. I mean, again, like, it's not making me a fan of Origin, but if the marketplace becomes highly competitive, the consumer always wins. It's when the marketplace is dominated by a few that don't bother to compete with each other that the consumer loses. So, like on the PlayStation and Xbox, they compete with each other. They don't slash prices on titles.
Yeah.
They rarely even slash prices on their digital titles, In
a lot of cases, it's the same titles. It's not like you're,
Yeah, so that's good. It'll be interesting to see how they keep up with that. Alright, let's talk about some designers, some game developers, some chiefs, some personalities that need to just, like these, like, okay, I know I went off on Cliffy B last week, And it seemed like instead of, like, heeding my words of, like, as a titan of the game industry, don't talk shit about other games, especially successful ones. Now, Heavy Rain designer David Cage said, like, games need to grow up and they need to become more mature and, you know, all of this thing. The problem I have with this isn't so bad. This is just the tip here. We're just working our way into this one. Is that there's something wrong with the ones today, okay? It's not that games need to diversify and we need to offer more experiences than we do today. There's nothing wrong with the experiences we offer today. There are one type of experience that we're offering today, or two types of experiences. We need to offer as much as emotions and offer experiences as movies and books and comic books and other forms of entertainment do as we mature and grow. Which is happening regardless of Heavy Rain David over here getting up on stage and saying we need to do it. Like, no industry has ever gone like, holy shit, you're right, David. We didn't think of that. Like, no, fuck, they've already thought of that. They're already going in there. They're already doing that direction. It's already happening.
It just takes time.
It's going to take time. It's going to take destroying the publisher model. Sorry, that has to, you know, when there's a lot of money involved and a few people at the top controlling it all, no one takes risks. Call of Duty Battlefield.
And everyone's targeting the $60 price range.
Yes, and when every game you're gonna invest multi-millions of dollars in, you're not gonna take risks. You're not gonna experiment with things that could flop. You don't want to have a critically acclaimed, financially failed game.
Or in many cases, things will flop, but you don't want to scale down the scope to fit, you know, another price range.
So I just don't like that. And it also has a little tinge of the games and violence debate of, like, they're wrong games. You know, these are bad games that just need to purge from the system. I just don't, again, respect those developers for what they do. It doesn't have to be your thing. It doesn't have to be the kind of game you want. Like, so I go back to Peter Molyneux. He comes out and he says, I'm not making the games I want. I'm failed. These aren't what I want. I want to push the envelope. I want to challenge these things. I take it upon myself to go where I think things need to go.
Yeah.
Not stand up there and say, you guys are fucking it all up. Games need to mature. You guys need to grow up. You need to quit. I mean, he does talk about, like, you know, we're still like an adolescent culture.
I think you can make an argument for that, but if you look at the cases where it's come under fire, like, again, we both played Spec Ops The Line recently, so Spec Ops The Line is basically kind of implying the same things about these games. It's just doing so with, you know, more subtly. I don't want to say with satire, but it's making a statement that's not calling someone else.
That came about by 2K. So that's not like an indie game that you can expect a wide berth of license.
It's people in the industry that
they allowed that to be made is amazing, because they didn't just say, no, play it safe. And they did at some part. They were like, it has to have multiplayer. Play it safe.
Yeah. But the condemnation of violence and the immature way it's used in games is there. It's just not as blatant as this. By the same token, you know, there's a lot of controversy last E3 about some of the game trailers. Tomb Raider, was it Far Cry? I can't remember.
Yeah, it was Far Cry.
Yeah.
I don't have it up, but
that came from outside of the games industry. It wasn't...
No, it came from inside the games industry, too.
Well, what I mean, it wasn't like...
I read tons of journalists that were tweeting and writing reviews of, like, Far Cry is going to be a piece of shit. Far Cry 3 is going to be a piece of shit, because if they're having to put tits on the screen to sell this... That is disgusting, and it also says, like, you don't have good gameplay to show.
Well, what I mean is, it's not like one developer getting up and talking smack directly about, you know, another developer, you know. I think in this case, you know, you're comparing him to Peter Molyneux. It's more that...
I'm comparing the respect of your peers. That's what I'm comparing to Peter Molyneux. Peter Molyneux is not out saying... You guys are turning out the same... He might
Yeah.
behind closed doors.
He might
be
but
like,
he's not. Yeah,
fucking
calling them out.
Microsoft. Oh, you want to make another fucking Halo game, just like the previous Halo game, and we take the helmet off. That's your big reveal. You fucking lazy ass pieces of shit. He may be totally behind closed doors saying that. Publicly, he talks about himself and the need to challenge himself and make these kinds of games. And that's what I'm saying that David needs to be saying, not the industry is lazy and we need to grow up.
The implication there is almost that he doesn't think he can do it, or he doesn't think he's going to have success if he does it.
I'm telling you, take your fucking responsibility and put your money where your mouth is. And, like, I think games can achieve so much more than they do today. So my focus is going to be games that do this and that and this and that. And I think these things are important. And you gain a cult following, and you gain a tribe, and you gain other designers who will think like you and follow you, and you create that reality. When you go out with this kind of thing, you just create, like, no, there's nothing fucking wrong with Call of Duty. Tons of people love that. And by the way, we got that prestige system from Call of Duty, and that thing is a great evolution in multiplayer game design.
And given that he made Heavy Rain, and it's kind of it's trying to be that sort of game, it's almost like he's taking pot shots at, it's personal. It's not a statement about the industry.
It's the magnification of the indie devs who are not willing to accept. It's the personality traits.
Yeah.
In the indie devs who are not willing to accept that their game may just suck.
Yes.
And start blaming the trash titles on the service, or silver dollar games, or game reviewers don't give me a fair shake because they only played the trial, or, it's all these other things are wrong. And if these things were right, like, this is not what he said, but it's almost like you were hitting at it, and implied Heavy Rain would have done better.
Yes.
If you guys would act right. And, yeah, so that's the issue with him. We got more.
Okay.
We got Warren Spector. Warren Spector going down the same angle, but he explicitly says Lollipop Chainsaw should not exist. That is a game that should not exist. Should not have been made. Do you know what game should not have been made, Warren? Epic Mickey. Okay? Epic Mickey 2. And guess what game's not going to exist, Warren? Epic Mickey 3. Because 1 and 2 shouldn't have existed. Those were horrible, bad games. Lollipop Chainsaw is kind of a bad game too, but he's not attacking it from like, oh, this is a horrible game. But again, this is another designer who is now recently unemployed and decides to shoot his mouth off at, like, now that I'm out here, like Cliff Pasinski did with Saints Row, I'm going to take shots at these other games and these other franchises, and we have a game press. We have a review press that go out and they play these games and they rate them and they review them, and that's their job, right? It benefits you not at all. Do you think you've endeared the developers who spent 3 years working on Lollipop Chainsaw? Do you think Tara Strong, who, did the voice acting for that, is, like, ready to sign up for the next Warren Spector game? No. Do you think you're solving any problems with that negative, I'm not saying, like, you can't be negative on a game. I'm not saying you can't post at it. I'm saying, if you're a game designer, you need to think a little bit about calling out your peers, because it will come back to bite you.
Yeah, I mean,
how many of those guys that have stuff like that on their resume are going to be interested in going to a Warren Spector studio when he launches his next studio or starts up now that he's no longer at Disney?
I don't know. I didn't read the full content of what he said, but to me, I have less of a problem calling out a game like that. I don't know if it was good or bad, but clearly it's playing into certain tropes, trying to evoke a certain response.
Well, and also, he talked about games need to be shorter, and games need to give me more experiences because I'm older, and I don't have the patience to go through this, and all this. And there was also this, like, old man rant of like,
Get off my lawn.
I got my ass kicked in Call of Duty, and I'm pissed at you, damn little Squeaker. I don't know if you know who Squeaker is on Machinima.
No.
I don't know if the guy's voice is this way, if it's actually a kid. He sounds like a little, like, 13-year-old kid with a little squeaky voice, and he just runs around trash talking and records all of that and then puts it on Machinima. So it's like trolling the trolls, basically, is what he's doing. It sounds like Warren Spector got trolled by Squeaker and something, and he's just pissed and get off my lawn. And while he's going on that tirade of, like, you know, games need to be shorter and have these experiences, and, you know, some of these games, you know, no point, and some of these games should not even have been made, is when his slide deck goes to Lollipop Chainsaw, and, you know, he's very explicitly saying, like, yeah.
Yeah. I think, and I'm connecting these two stories in maybe a way they shouldn't, but I think there's a difference between arguing about the content of the games and the stories that are being told, and arguing, you know, about the game design and either the laziness or whatever in it. And like the Heavy Rain producer's comments, is he muddling the two there? Like saying that, you know, being immature leads to bad game design? Because those are not necessarily the same argument. Well,
and on Warren Spector thing, talking about like where he's at now, well, that's great. That's where you're at now. Guess what?
Yeah.
There are always teenagers. Guess what? There are always 13-year-old boys. Guess what? There are always every age, every spectrum. It's a constant. So
and I think you can, you know...
Those games that rocked and were awesome when you were 13 are awesome and rocking for somebody who's 13 now. And yeah, they don't rock you anymore. Great. Don't play them. They're not for you.
Yeah.
But they can exist.
My response is, I have more sympathy if you're attacking something like a Lollipop Chainsaw from a content perspective, because it's pretty much clear like what they're going for. From a design perspective, I've never played it, and yeah, there's a little more leeway.
I've not played Lollipop Chainsaw, but the reviews I saw, the playthroughs, it has its gimmick, gets old fast, it's repetitive, boring gameplay, non-interesting, okay?
Yeah.
Set up with a cool premise, you know, and it was set up pretty cool. And, you know, it's like sexist.
Yeah.
All that stuff exists. I've never been saying, like, you gotta ban DOA, you gotta ban... No. What you have to do is offer the alternatives. Don't just let that be the only thing.
Yeah.
But take a game like Bayonetta. Not very far in demographic appeal from a Lollipop Chainsaw. Right? It's conceivable somebody saw Bayonetta and went like, we need to get a game in that demographic going. Here's this Lollipop Chainsaw. It's been, you know, greenlit. Now make that game. But Bayonetta actually is a good game. If you like those kind of Devil May Cry type combo bashing Street Fighter the side scroller game, basically, right? If you like that kind of game, which I don't, but even to its credit in Bayonetta, even its sexism, it's blatant sexism, right? That it's running. It leans into it the entire time, and it gets more absurd and more crazy and it becomes like, yeah, I know, like, it doesn't just lynch on like the entire game. As she does more combo moves, she loses more clothes. Like, that was like done here. Now we're like angels riding motorcycles, you know, and flying through the air, and it's just like you're playing for the spectacle. So in Warren Spector's view, like, he's like, I've blown them all. But what I'm saying is like, no, Lollipop Chainsaw, bad game as a game, and Bayonetta, good game as a game. You just need to allow that can happen, and you don't need to go out and block a whole genre, because you will lose good games.
I don't necessarily say... well, it doesn't necessarily mean he's talking about banning. It just, you know, it may be...
When you say a game should not have been made, this game should not exist.
Well, I can take that one of two ways. I can take that one as it should be banned, this should be a moratorium, or culturally we should just move in a different direction.
No, we will not publish that. That Steam should, no, we're not going to, nobody's going to sign off on Lollipop Chainsaw.
Well, or the alternative is we should not have gotten to a point where publishers think that, is a safe move to greenlight. In one, they're actively trying to stop it, even though it would sell quite a lot, In the other, there's just no demand for it. It's, it doesn't necessarily mean he's talking about banning games.
I don't see much of a distinction. Like, to him, if it's not available, it might as well, ban, whether it's not available by banning or by industry just refusing to publish some games like that and no one signs off on it, saying, that whole type of game doesn't exist in my future, that is a censorship. That is what he is pushing.
Yeah, well, I don't know. It's either censorship or no need for it, no demand for it.
Well, clearly there's a demand for it.
Exactly.
That's what he's angry about.
He might be wishing there's not. And that's not the same as censorship.
They didn't go out and buy his Epic Mickey. True. Which also sounds like a sexist thing, too. A little sex maneuver.
Oh.
The Epic Mickey?
The Epic Mickey.
Oh, Mickey.
We were, we were on the dance floor. We were on the dance floor, and, she gave me the eyes, and I moved in and gave her an Epic Mickey to seal the deal.
Is this slipping someone a Mickey? Because that we're getting into areas that we don't need
They
to.
slipped him an Epic Mickey.
All right, I'm not going to talk about personalities without bringing up Gabe. It wouldn't be a GameMarx podcast if we don't talk about Gabe Newell. But I mean, the man trolls the news industry. I think he does.
I think he trolls himself.
I think at this point he's well aware of the stuff, but also he has no problem spouting off stuff off the top of his head. That's the way he's thinking. The interesting one here, the link I'm linking to is he said a lot of crazy things at DICE and things like that of I want to make a movie with J.J. Abrams on Portal and all this kind of just wow stuff and J.J. Abrams is yeah, I'm going to make a game with Valve and although they did confirm it's not Half-Life 3, so it's not going to be a J.J. Abrams directs Half-Life 3. But on this one, Greenlight, basically according to Gabe, is a failure. It became a bottleneck on its own, and he does not want that. He wanted a democratization of the Steam storefront. And he doesn't want us to be dictators. He doesn't want Valve to be dictators of what gets on the service. He wants the consumers, the gamers, to curate, not Valve, not to be an arbitrary thing. And it's kind of interesting to hear it talk a little bit because it's he's still working through. What is that? What does a valid community curated store look like? Because I posted this to our game design group, and it's I know as an indie game developer, a more open Steam sounds awesome. But do you really want a more open Steam if it becomes Xbox Live Indie Games?
No.
Because the power of Steam is if your game's good enough to get in, right, that you pretty much can go awesome. Quit the day job if you haven't already, and you've either made it, you arrive, or that's coming up soon. You have a built-in audience. The odds of your other games making it to Steam in the future, doors open up. It's a grand gateway for you, pretty good right now. As an indie, if you make it to Steam, mainstream press covers a lot of indies that pop up on Steam. That seems to be, a litmus test of whether or not they'll do gameplay video of it and reviews of it and things like that. All of a sudden, if there's a lot more, if it's Xbox Live Indie Games, and there's 20, 25 new games released every week, you're not getting that press anymore. And, do you want that? Is that... It's
high risk versus high reward.
Yeah,
basically.
And it's no, Gabe, we want you to continue curating, honestly.
And I'm going to guess, even though
Greenlight is a decent method.
Yeah. Even though he calls it a dictatorship, I'm guessing he wants, he's not going to dump it and become, the iOS store, Google Play, Xbox Live Indie Games,
Yes, I think he was very careful not to say, like,
Yeah.
those are the model of the future, because I don't think he believes that.
But I think as indie developers, that's what we want to hear, because...
Yeah, I mean, that's
awesome,
a true open. Now, one thing he did say was the idea of other people curating. So I think I don't know if he said this, or somebody else posted this example, or that idea.
It was in that article.
But, like, Notch has a Steam storefront. And these are the indies that Notch has chosen to feature. Right? And then you just have these different people who have chosen, like GameMarx could have like a GameMarx indie feature. And so it's almost like a meta layer of filtering. People aren't filtering the games, they're filtering the different curators. And it's like GameMarx is shit, but Notch is great. So nobody pays attention to the GameMarx store, but everybody watches the Notch store.
We're assuming that, again, like Kickstarter's curation, that he's going to open that up to everyone. And he may, I imagine that may be very selective.
Well, again, remember, this is Gabe Newell spouting off shit.
Yeah.
So, like, you can't take any stock in anything.
Yeah,
in theory, at Valve, you work on whatever the fuck you want to work on, whenever you want to work on it. So...
Well, I did read into the comments about Greenlight, though whatever changes they make are going to be incremental and not, like, completely change the service.
Which is what they've been doing. Which is what they have been doing.
Yeah.
But he was pretty harsh on Greenlight. And he basically, like, Greenlight is a failure. Greenlight is a bad example of an election process. It is not what we wanted. Well,
that's my point is whatever they do next may also be a failure. Yeah. So it may take a couple of steps to get there.
What I do love about them, what I love about Valve, while he's always on the podcast, is they are very iterative, and they don't just like, nope, this is the ultimate design, and we are going to ignore all the signs that point to it's not working. Like, say, you make a OS, and you decide to, instead of, I don't know, make a tablet OS and then make a desktop OS.
Or a mobile OS and a desktop OS.
You merge
as
the two.
As most companies do.
Yeah. And then just completely ignore... By the way, do you know like the Surface RT 64 gigabyte model?
Has like
Pro? Has 23 gigabytes available?
Yes, I saw that. And you can make a backup disk and remove some of it, but...
Yeah. But A, how many people know to do that? For $1,000, fucking put the thumbstick in the box, man.
Yes.
Like, my MacBook Air came with a little USB stick to reinstall it. You know? Same price. Come on, guys. Anyway.
One interesting thing I noticed about that article is if you read between the lines, there's almost an implication of, like, the Humble Bundle store that we talked about a couple weeks back where... the items you sell aren't through the Humble Bundle, but you can sell items through their store. Aren't in the Humble Bundle, but you can sell items through their service.
So
what that's worth.
Gabe's not going to like hearing this when he plays our podcast back, but Carmack, no business for Linux gaming. He basically came out and said, like, guys, this Linux market thing is still not real. Not enough people are running it. Audio drivers are a joke. I don't know if he mentioned the audio driver situation, but
yeah.
It's just like, all right, come on. It's everybody keeps like holding it up as this white knight.
Well, it's kind of like it was 10, 15 years ago, where the year of desktop Linux was every year.
Yes. And he's like, it's not there. It's not worth the cost of the port. And he talks about ID software and their experiences with that. And, he basically tells somebody to put their money where their mouth is. He's like, if you think it's worth it, then convince a publisher that you'll take a title and port it and financially guarantee the cost of the port will be covered by the sales.
Well, I think that's what Valve is trying to do with all the talk of Steambox and stuff like that, is create that ecosystem where it makes sense.
I think we've talked about this before. I think the Linux thing from Steam is for the Steam box, so that Steam boxes aren't paying Windows licenses.
Yeah,
because you may not know this.
Which makes perfect sense.
But Gabe does not like Microsoft.
Yeah, and they'd
Not a fan.
probably want him to put Windows 8 on it, and
Yes.
that's a disaster.
You didn't know he worked at Microsoft, right? Like he shipped Windows 3? He shipped Windows 1, 2, and 3?
I remember hearing that, but yeah.
Which the joke is like after that experience, that's why he's not going to ship anything named 3 ever again. There'll be no Left 4 Dead 3, there'll be no Half-Life 3, there'll be no, 3, he's done. Not going to do any more 3s. 2's good enough.
I don't know, and Valve could expand that market either by encouraging other PC developers to do it or by doing their own hardware, so either way.
Stegs has mentioned games got adoption on Windows, so why can't people switch to Linux? The thing is that people have to actively switch to Linux. Windows comes when you buy the new laptop.
Yeah.
Linux does not. I don't think it's a matter of one better than the other, or one preferring or something like that. You have to be a geek to know about Linux, grab it, switch to it, deal with it. Until,
find drivers for your particular hardware.
Dell, which is not going to happen because Microsoft gave them money to help go private, and HP are shipping Linux OSs right alongside Windows OSs, full support. Offices, everything is there, and their productivity units. I don't think Linux will have the install base.
All the computer manufacturers have a vested interest in continuing with Windows, and honestly, the mobile market is kind of cementing the idea that your OS and your hardware are
joined.
So.
Plus, Windows is $50 now or something, right? Windows 8 is $50 now.
They did an upgrade license for a while, but I don't know. I think that's ending.
I bet you that does not end.
It does not end.
Given current state of affairs.
Well, it would make sense because it would make them competitive with Mac OS updates, even though Mac OS X is updated more frequently.
Hey, speaking of Microsoft, did you see that they report next Xbox will require an internet connection? Games will come with a code that locks them to your console. So you'll get the disc, you'll enter the code, you'll install the disc, and then it's locked to your account and your console, just like an XBLA title.
We
had the same story with PlayStation.
I hope this is like a trial balloon that they're floating out, and they realize it's not going to fly. It's not going to work. Because, I don't see that working well. Especially, okay. Steam kind of does the same thing.
Yep.
But with Steam, it's inherent in the system. It's not like this extra process that you have to walk through.
The game goes on sale and you're picking it up for $16 or, significant discounts come in. Microsoft, you can go in and buy 4-year-old, 5-year-old games on demand at $60 still.
Yeah.
So, there's a ton. I'm not too worried about this because I don't think physical media has long for this earth anyway.
No.
And digital, I think I'm just accepted the fact it's going to have this requirement anyway, so...
It seems like if they could put a code on disk that would automatically do this, I don't know that they could, but that would make more sense than, if it's a separate process, consumers will think about it. If it happens automatically, they will not care.
Yeah. See, that's a big thing. If it'll be pretty upfront in your face...
you're getting screwed.
It'll be less upfront in your face if they don't find out till you take your game over to a friend's house or you loan it to a friend and they can't play it. And it'll be a lower level of complaint.
Yeah. Or you need to, log in with your Xbox Live account for this game.
I think I'm definitely at the position now where I am not buying a console at release. There's too much unknown. Wait. It's a wait and see situation. Because whatever they launch with, I get the feeling that it'll change rapidly.
Yeah, it'll have to.
This stuff will change,
especially in
post-holiday. Because they talked about this on Giant Bomb a little bit this week, but it almost feels like I almost agree with them. This cycle feels different. This console the next generation feels like a make or break moment for consoles. This could be a decline of consoles for a while, at least on the back burner, or at least what we think of consoles as.
Well, consoles have gotten to the point, and PCs have gotten to the point where it almost seems unnecessary.
Yeah. A part of that is also every time a console generation is ending, PC is always winning.
Yeah.
Then the consoles come out and it shifts the other way.
But it's also there's nothing about playing a game on my PC versus my console that makes me feel like my console is losing.
Right.
Graphics or hardware-wise. So
I had a crappy NVIDIA GTX 250 card, and my graphics look better on my PC than they do on my console.
yeah, but it's to such a level now that it's hard. You hardly notice it in most cases.
The X-Plane creator, I think this story's been out for a little bit, but came up again, is being sued for patent trolling. Basically, he used the Android DRM API as provided by Google, as recommended for the Android store, and there's somebody that has a patent. They claim that that's their property. And the thing about this is that Google doesn't get involved. Okay? So pretty much everybody else has an indemnity clause, right? So, like, there's people suing people who use Oracle because they claim Oracle infringes upon their stuff. And Oracle has what's called an indemnity clause of like, no, we own the shit. If somebody sues you for our software, they have to sue us. They can't sue you. There's an indemnity clause. We protect against that. And famously, Google does not provide that for Android. They're the only ones that do not seek for patent protection on Android. So if somebody has a patent claim against the Android API, they can go after the developers. And, this guy said, all Google will do is hand over some documentation.
Wow.
No lawyers, no legal support. And it's like, this is getting crazy because these guys are going after more and more Android developers. And it seems like this could wreck a platform. Like a few high-dollar lawsuits on the DRM API, right? Like, could blow this thing completely apart. Basically, it's like, if you use DRM on Android, already known for high piracy,
Yeah.
if you use a DRM API in Android, this company sues you and they win millions of dollars and take all the profit from your game, and they shut this guy down who all he did was make a flight simulator,
Seems like a weird target, just like when you go, well, I guess a higher profile target would,
More money. It's a patent troll.
yeah, would have more money to fight it.
So I don't know. I mean, I'm surprised that Google has been silent as long as they have on the patent issue with Android, and that, it's not Microsoft jumping up and doing it. Although Microsoft were accused of FUD, but they were like, Google's leaving you exposed on Android because of this patent litigation. It's a big deal. And Google was like, they're just spreading fear, blah, 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 stuff's out here, it's open source, it's, all that. It's like, you don't appreciate how broken the patent system is. I mean, we could get a lawsuit. We could get a lawsuit for this podcast right now. There is a patent troll who got an issue on a patent. He sued, like, the Adam Carolla podcast and a couple others, claiming that they have a patent on podcasting. On podcasting, not like a special method of podcasting or something they do typical, just general podcasting, period. Running out and suing people, and it's like, how the fuck does our patent office issue somebody a patent on podcasting in 2011? I think that's when that was issued, or granted, or extended to cover something. It's like a weird story of like this patent from 1995 being amended and amended and amended, and it's like, it didn't even have words like internet and stuff in it, I think, in 95, and...
Let's not, like... And it could happen, because, I mean, if you remember back to the, I think the company name was Eolus lawsuit against Microsoft.
It was the plug-in patent, right?
Yeah, and they actually, for a while, you had to click on...
You had to click on ActiveX controls, yep.
In no other browser, but, it was a huge deal. So, I mean, yeah, it could totally happen.
All right. Interesting stuff happening at GameStop and Zynga. So Zynga, the GM of Zynga, general manager, head game designer, they've all fucking left, and they're winding up at Kongregate, and Kongregate's joining forces with GameStop, right? So you got the Flashware site joining up with the used game seller hiring executives in from the social online guy. But Kongregate is shaping up to be this indie mobile platform.
Wait, Kongregate?
Kongregate, yeah. This indie mobile platform publisher. Basically, they want to be a publisher on mobile platforms. So you're talking iOS, we're talking the open platforms. But they want you to come to them so they can help you market, package, improve, playtest, finance, do basically, you know, a lot of what a publisher would do for you on these already open platforms that generally people don't go through publishers on. It's kind of interesting. This could be a good thing. I mean, because, you know, Kongregate, right, is known as just this wild, open, indie, crazy idea. Like, so these guys are in tune kind of with, like, indies and that culture. Of course, GameStop and Zynga GM, you know, general manager,
really.
not. But they do bring to it a corporate financing arm, you know, strategic arm, marketing arm, and GameStop. You know, if GameStop is pushing these games in their stores, you know, that's huge, you know, so it could be interesting. I don't know. This is a weird combination.
It makes me feel kind of smart.
But it does.
How about GameStop?
No, just in general, it's just like, this feels like a front.
Which one is the front and which one is the...
I don't know. And that what makes me nervous. I think it could be good if it's actually a good intention, but something makes me just feel like they're...
I think my experience with GameStop and their involvement in this, it kind of seems funny because, like I said, I sold my PSP and DS a while back, and then I went to another GameStop to get a birthday present for a friend, and I noticed, you know, they're selling download titles. You can look through a, kind of like you would do with the Steam catalog, except in store. They've got a binder full at one of them. And then another one of them had like a ton, like 10 different models of high-level gaming headphones. It seems like they are kind of positioning themselves, coming up with these backup plans.
Well, it's like the writing's on the wall. Physical media is not long.
But none of the backup plans are really good.
Yeah.
Because they, you know, what can
like
you do with a physical store?
You guys should not have gotten rid of your deep retro parts. Because, I mean, they used to. I could get a SNES in there. I can get a Nintendo. I can get an N64. GameCube were sold back there. And then they, like, slowly, like, the PS2, I think, is the only previous gen left in there. Like, I think they got rid of Xbox Classic.
I think so.
GameCube's gone. Mm-hmm. And I think, like, PS2 is now, like, a bin. It's no longer, like, walls in there. Yeah. If you find one with a PS2. And it's like, you guys probably should have held on to that market.
Well, they'd have to control it a little better. Because, you know, you're going to have a lot of inventory. So at some point, you're going to have to go, like, no, we can't buy, you know, your used console if you do that. And that would also, like, that niche is being filled by a lot of locally owned mom and pop stores. So
yeah, but ours are going out of business.
Okay, that is true.
You know, as I'm running around looking for my power supply, I literally went up to our Game Haven to a U-Haul being loaded.
Wow.
Yep. So I was like, okay. And I kind of went up and talked to the guy for a bit, hoping that he would be like, you know, fuck this thing. I tried to make this thing work. Don't get enough sales. You need a Super Nintendo. Here you go. Here's a box of Super Nintendo shit. It's cheaper for me to give it to you than ship it back to Texas where I'm from. I tried.
But no.
It didn't happen that way. Yeah, so, yeah, I don't know. It's good to see them trying, and it's good to see, like, except for Kongregate, like these other ones, Zynga, of course, you know, having issues. It's not a good long-term thing. GameStop has long-term problems, and that they're, like, looking for this new thing. And, you know, it could be a very valuable indie service, right? Like, if these guys provide that kind of services to indies, it could shape publishing in the future of where I hope it goes, where publishers become turnkey solutions that you can use if you want them. So it's like, I chose to go with a publisher on this title and have them handle my marketing and distribution and social media and yada yada yada. Not this, I got a publisher, so they fucking own all my shit. They canned my game. I don't even have the IP. I can't release my game, and I'm screwed. The last 3 years of our work is now gone. Everybody's laid off. Have fun.
It almost seems like a version of, like, publishing in the book world. You know, you've got some that are, you know, you've got the big name publishers, you've got a lot of smaller houses, and then of course you've got the vanity
that'll do, like,
and
editing
scams
for you, and you do got the scams.
But like, if the money is not flowing towards the writer, something's wrong. You know,
I mean, there was a Kickstarter. What is it? Last Journey, something Journey, Final Journey.
Not ringing a bell.
Final Journey Fantasy Chronicles 7 Cross Trigger. I don't know. I forget. It's Last Journey or something. I don't know. Anyway, the guy made 2 games that I keep looking over because I'm waiting for chat to like, oh, you fucking idiot, it's this. These were popular and I had heard of them before and I've never played either one. And the guy is talking on the thing and he's saying, I am the creator of The Journey and Journey : the sequel or whatever it was. And these are, you know, revered and loved games. And I have finally secured the rights to make the third, you know, thing. And now I'm doing the Kickstarter to fund it. And my reaction to seeing that was, it's fucked up when the guy can stand there and say, I created and designed the first game, and I created and designed the second game, and I have managed to negotiate the rights to create the third game in the universe that I created everything in. And The Longest Journey. See, I knew Stegs would come through. It was The Longest Journey, and Longest Journey : the sequel. Yeah, so that guy's on there, he's doing like a third one. So if you played The Longest Journey, and the name is familiar to me in that I know people who vividly loved that series. Go back he's looking for $850,000. It's already up to like 250 when I looked, but man, almost $1 million. That's still a rough climb, you know. Games get that, but not the ones that ask for that, you know. To end it tonight, I want to cover another Game Dev Tutorials Plus site. And this is really just an explanation and a review on a product. But one of the books to read on game design is called A Book of Lenses. And the author has put out a deck of lenses. And essentially, these are a set of cards that, you know, lenses are different ways of looking at your game. That's the concept of the book. Of like, here's the lens of the player, a lens of the artist, a lens of the story, and you hold up through that view, how does my game stack up? And the cards are essentially, like you would go through them. Let's see if I got a big card on here. Yeah, here's one, the lens of story. And, you know, be sure the story in your game is as good as it can be. Ask yourself these questions. Does my game really need a story? Why? Why will players be interested in this story? How does the story, you know, yada, yada, yada. How can my story be better? So ask these questions. And it's a deck of cards. So it's like, you know, as you're doing the game design, it's like break out the card deck and then, like, you know, go through these cards. There's 100 and something of them. But go through these cards, grab the ones that you think are relevant and hold those up, and then go down them and answer those questions and just, like, force yourself. So pretty cool idea. I nearly went and bought this on Amazon. I think you could buy the Book of Lenses and the Deck of Lenses. They prompted like, hey, buy these together for like $70. I was like, not bad. Because I think the card deck is like $30-40 by itself, and the book is like $30-40. So, then I remembered I blew like $70 in SNES and SNES accessories, SNES and SNES accessories, and I was like, I should wait a little bit until I'm actively working on a game again to dive back into that, and I keep thinking that I bought the Book of Lenses already.
I've heard it mentioned before.
It's on my Amazon wish list, and I keep thinking I got it, but anytime I look at the books, it's like, no, I don't actually have it. So that always gives me pause before I buy it. Of like, I know as soon as I buy it, like, I look over, like, oh, fuck, there it is. And now I'll have one to match each SNES. All right.
The title of this episode is Matching SNESes.
Well, I was going to go with Franken-SNES Horror.
As with
it fits last week's
as
title.
with the link to the past videos, no innocence can be left unblemished.
Yeah, so check out our game. Keep an eye on the YouTube channel if you're into watching gameplay videos in the YouTube, which I found out I highly am into. Screw television. I'm just gonna watch the third Chrono Trigger playthrough again. You know, like watch my third endurance run of a Chrono Trigger on there, which is a game that you will not see me play because I already have. But I do think at some point I'm going to get Chrono Cross.
Do want to be there for that?
To experience the disappointment, because I'm genuinely loving Chrono Cross. Love the game, and as I watch people play through it, like, it's moving up. Chrono Trigger. It's moving up on my, like, yeah, that's really a damn good game. I really am appreciating all the things that went in that game, even though I played the DS version, not the SNES version. I think I could be greatly disappointed by Chrono Cross, and I kind of want that disappointment. I kind of want to experience...
I do think, like, some of the cutscenes, there's at least one cutscene that supposedly ties in. I don't know if that's just something I heard from a friend who
I've
made it up.
There was a cutscene, but you had to do something to get to it, I think.
Okay.
Alright, well, with that, I think, thank you everyone who tunes in the live show, enjoyed us here, thank you for watching us on YouTube, and thank you for the dedicated many who follow us and subscribe to us on iTunes and listens to an audio podcast. We will be back in a week.
You've been listening to GameMarx. Visit us at GameMarx.com for the latest news, reviews, and videos on indie gaming. That's GameMarx.com.
Do you play the original StarCraft?
Yes.
And the expansion, Brood War?
I think at that point, like, I only played... I don't remember how much of the single player I played. Probably not much, because I always hate RTS single player. I think I have Brood War for multiplayer, but I don't think I ever played the story mode.
So do you know the story of StarCraft?
No. Why?
I'm gonna kill this news item then.
You can spoil it. I mean, I don't care at this
No,
point.
it's not a spoiler. It's like you can't have the discussion of...
Well, what's the...
Well, it's not even like a news item. It was just on the trope site. Kerrigan was put up as damsel in distress.
But she kind of subverts that trope later on, doesn't she? I mean, because...
Well, like, if you know the whole story of her, that'd be the debate of, like, she's kind of damsel in distress in StarCraft 2, a little bit, although you spend the whole fucking game fighting her, so...
Yeah, like...
But you save her, but you're fighting her to save her, and, you know, like, that's Raynor's reason for wanting to do it.
Yeah.
But you're taking out the fact of, like, she was a badass in the first StarCraft, and you never rescue her.
Yeah.
She's abandoned. Minx abandons her on the planet, and she's gone from the game at that point. She's a killed character as far as you know, and then Brood War is like, you know, no, she's not dead. She's Zerg, and she's pissed, you know, and it's like...
Yeah.
I don't know, like, you can call her the damsel in distress.
Well, because, see, again, I haven't played the game, but it seems like you're treading the line between damsel in distress, who then, you know, becomes a formidable opponent in her own right, with, you know, kind of the never leave a man behind sort of trope. Like, you would feel bad if like I would expect the character to have the same reaction to a male soldier that he left.
But I mean, to the discussion of is Kerrigan a damsel in distress? It's like, I don't think. I could see if you only looked at StarCraft II Wings of Liberty campaign, knew nothing prior and after, didn't pay attention to the fact that she was commanding the Horde and had overthrown the Overmind and was running everything, you might just see, like, Raynor, he's got a picture of... She was never even his girlfriend or anything.
Yeah.
You know? Like, he only knew her... She was Minsk's number one lieutenant.
That's a trope that happens in, like, war movies and war stories.
Steggs, and what do you think, Steggs? Kerrigan, damsel in distress, or... No, this is a totally different direction. We'll probably have to wait like 5 minutes for the buffer to catch up.
Yeah. I don't know. It's one of those cases where, and I fully expect women versus tropes to do this, or tropes versus women, or whoever's fighting who. As with a lot of very touchy issues on the internet, like, it may kind of overstep its bounds because it's...
Well, I'm not saying it negatively. I'm not saying, like... Damsel in distress is a negative trope. Like, that is... It's definitely done to death. That's what's coming out of this. It's like, holy crap. Like, Bubble Bobble is damsel in distress. It's like, we've gone too far. We can come up with new ideas. I didn't even know there was a story in Bubble Bobble.
Well, my point is, it can be used negatively.
Even if you say, like, yes, she is, it's like, no, this is a well-done damsel in distress then, because she's not kidnapped.
Yeah.
She goes in, she does her mission like she always does, she's a badass, and then Minsk doesn't come in to save her at the end in StarCraft 1. So it's not like normally the damsel in distress is Bowser shows up, takes the princess, and runs, right? Now you gotta catch him, you know? Double Dragon shows up, beats up, takes your girlfriend, now you gotta go catch her. So it wouldn't fit in that pattern. Even if you did say, like, no, the drive for the main character is rescuing a female, so it's damsel in distress.
Well, I think the real test for that is, could you replace it with a man, or if it was a male character and a female heroine, could you replace it with another person of, the same gender or whatever?
So on Steg's, Steg's answer back to the question, didn't know about StarCraft 2, I don't know if he didn't play it. But StarCraft 1 seemed fine. Yeah, the point is Kerrigan is an equal character, and she's just a general badass. Yeah, so there's nothing inherent about her capture. Yeah, that's it. I mean, there's nothing inherent about Kerrigan's capture that she's a woman.
Yeah.
Right? It could have equally been a man, and everything could have played out the same way, except I wouldn't have fetishized about...
Yeah, and that may be the issue.
Yeah. That I fetishized about Brood War Kerrigan? Because that was the forum debate. The forum debate was always like, was she hotter before or after the transformation?
Okay, when you said fetishize, I thought you were going to the point of, like, Raynor, carrying around the photo. I did not realize you were taking
we were out of the game. Yeah, out of the game. The male fan base, that was always...
I think that's objectification, and that's slightly different than a trope. Tropes can be used for objectification. Objectification does not need a trope to be used.
That's true. Stakes of SE2 had a lot of focus on being emo about saving her. I think... God, and it's been a while. I think that the emo saving her was just Jim Raynor's story. Yeah. Like, the general or whoever was leading the rebellion against Minsk, that was his way of pulling Jim in. Of like, hey, we might be able to get Kerrigan. And he's like, okay, I'm gonna stop drinking in the bar and, we'll do this now. So I don't remember, like, that wasn't the overall mission. The mission was not going and save Kerrigan. That was like, it's like Minsk's son or something, isn't it? That's lead the rebellion?
I don't know.
I'm gonna need
I'm
not gonna need a recap before comes out the next month. The StarCraft 2 expansion comes out next month. Since I'm still munching a bit, I did give Rachel to read that Queen Bees and Wannabes book.
think you've mentioned that, but I don't.
Yeah, I've talked about it in the past. It's the one that breaks down all the different psychological profiles of girls
people in high school.
Yeah, in high school, teenage girls and all that. So
that's interesting. Like giving someone like, here's all the crap you're going to have to deal with in high school.
The book itself recommends that. Like after you've read it, and so she can read it and ask questions, things like that.
Is it written from a perspective of kind of like, because I picked up a book, I completely stalled out in the middle of it. It was called The Geeks Shall Inherit the Earth or something. It was talking about, it was kind of case studies of different people in high school, but it was written from the perspective of, okay, like, you remember this stuff when you were growing up, but like you're older. It's written for an older audience.
Right. No. This, it's recommended that you let the girls read it, after you've read it and, you think they're okay with reading it. And then also, it has, like, stories in there told by other girls. Like, as examples, like, these girls, I guess, talking to the psychiatrist, said, like, yeah, you can use that bit or passage or something. And then she lined it up to back up, like, a point of, like, this dynamic or this behavior leads to this kind of thing. And here's the other side of bullying and kind of pull that through. So, I mean, I think for the most part, Rachel's pretty well adjusted after reading the book, and it gives you a lot of signs and things to look for and the kinds of questions to ask and how to have conversations. I think most of that stuff is obvious in retrospect.
Yeah.
But I'm glad I read the book because it wouldn't have been going forward. But on the way to work, she was talking about it and, the different girls and the different cultures, and not cultures, different
cliques.
The cliques and the different characters, I guess you'd say, the different profiles, different archetypes. That's what I'm going for, of the girls. And I told her, I'm like, you understand, like, this is a book for identifying and helping, not manipulation. And she's like, what? I'm like, well, you could totally, like, read this book and know how to manipulate all the other girls. Because, like, it's basically telling you how to take down the queen, Because it's basically telling you, like, because the thing is, like, it's coming out, like, if your daughter, if she has these traits, she's the queen bee, but no, when it crashes, it'll go down this way, and, how bad it's going to be, and
strengths, weakness, opportunities, threats, basically.
It basically is, yeah.
Wow.
For each type, even, like, the introverted nerd girl, Yeah. And it even, like, runs, like, risks down the line, of, like, I'm going back to the queen bee again, but, like, potential, abusive relationships and things like that, because external status is everything. And there's no self-worth to the queen bee, because her self-worth only comes from other people telling her how great she is, and so she has to be with the perfect boy, and if he mistreats her, she's going to stick with it no matter what, because appearances are everything to her, so... I
wish there was kind of like a male version of this book, just because that part interests me.
There isn't a male version, like, the book basically explains, like, there wouldn't be a male version of the book, because males have the cliques, right?
Yeah.
But nobody from the jocks tells the geeks they need to be jocks. Like,
no, but
the computer geeks went off and they did their thing, and the jocks went off and did their thing, and there was hazing and there was bullying occasionally. But for the most part, whenever you found your group that you were in, you just stayed in your group, and you didn't cross the line.
Boys form packs.
Well, yeah, I know what I'm saying is, like, and, what the, like, long-term effects of that are, just because, especially when you're in school and you're dealing with that stuff, like, you have this in your mind of what, like, especially if you're, like, the introverted nerd, oh, everything's going to get better because in the real world, like, your job depends on the people who are, who do a good job and are considerate and, all these things. And then you get in the real world and you go, like, no, all the things my parents told me, to make me feel better then.
Even in the world of boys, like, at the moment where, like, the jock is talking to the geek,
and
hey, he fixes, like, the computer or something, like, there is, like, respect earned at that moment and honored, by the jock. Like, oh, you're good at that thing, like, oh, you know your shit type thing. Like, that, the main difference is, boys do not establish a societal pecking order, and girls do. There is a hierarchy, and all the girls place each other into a peg, and you're racked and stacked.
Like,
the boys, like, hey, there's the quarterback guy, and we all hang around the quarterback, but it's not a court underneath the quarterback, and everybody is fighting for position in the court of the quarterback. Whereas with the girls, yes, it is all about, okay,
I will agree there, but
in the queen's court.
I think there is still some level of, like, if you're a nerd, you're under the jocks and the press.
This is the reason to read the book.
Yeah.
Because as a male, you have no, like, I read this and it's like, I wouldn't have fucking made it through. Like, the shit that I'm reading about, it is immensely worse. And it doesn't come from boys. It comes from other girls. And, like, other girls would go over to a table, like, she doesn't talk to you, not in your clique, nothing. And she would tell you, you're fat, you need to quit eating, so damn much. And walk off. And just, like, put down, like, and it's like,
yeah,
that never happened. Like, I never had those situations. Like, any of the bullying situations were always an escalation, provocation, like, there was tension, and then, like, we were forced to be together, and that tension escalated. There was never just random drive-by of crap.
I had that, but it was always the same people. It was always the usual suspects, and it was a lot of times people who I was actually friends with before who just, like, at some point decided, hey, it would be cool to, exclude and kick this guy around. So, I mean, I don't know. It was never really escalation, but I don't know. I'm just saying that the whole... It's not as bad for guys, but there's still some of that, and you tend to go into it... Like, you tend to go in... my point is more, like, you tend to assume high school mentality resolves a certain way, and, And
there's also the double pressure of... whatever you do as a guy, that's your thing. My thing was spending a bunch of time on the computer.
Yeah.
Nobody had an issue with it. That's Mike's thing. He spends a bunch of time on the computer. This guy, he's trumpet and band. That's his thing. Girls can't have their thing. Girls spending too much time on the computer, hon, you need to get out. You need to dress up better. You shouldn't walk around in sweats.
From parents or other students?
Society.
Society.
Like, if your parents don't do it, you're going to get it from somewhere else.
If I drew too much, I needed to go practice my French horn. If I played my French horn too much, I needed to go out and play with friends. If I play with friends too much, I needed to go do something else.
You need to make sure you're socially active, and there's pressure, whereas I never had pressure from friends, family, relatives, random people of, like, you're spending way too much time inside. I mean, Mom would ask those questions, but not in, like, you need to go out. Yeah. Mom would be like, you don't want to, like, if I give you $20, would you call up your friends and go to a movie? The
only time that wasn't true was when I was going for the economics award in Beta Club. I had placed in the school, and so Mom let me have that extra time so that I could study for state. And then I made nationals, and she was like, you can have all the time you want to study for this. Because my mom's competitive streak came in. I think she saw a queen bee in me. She's like, you'll be queen in economics, and you do a great job, and it's going to be great.
Yeah, and see that...
That's the only time when that click system doesn't come back in, is when the competitive nature of somebody else comes in. Because you see your friends, they give you time, it's like, oh, she's studying economics, I gotta leave her alone.
There's strengths to every profile. Like, the strengths on the queen bee is assertiveness and, giving direction and, can be great CEOs. They can go on. It's just that the point of the book is, like, you got to address the weaknesses. So you kind of identify what her strengths already are, and then then kind of like, okay, we're going to avoid the weaknesses without destroying the advantages.
And actually, I can totally see that, like, you assume if your kid is, like, one of the popular kids, then everything's great. You don't have to do anything.
Yeah.
And also, like I said, the temptation is, if you're not one of the popular kids, the temptation is to go, no, everything will work out in the end, and you don't have to change a thing or do a thing or, you know.
All right. So this has been Parenting Advice by Mike Dillon and Cicely.
I don't need to be giving parenting advice.
You have
No.
life experience, therefore you can give advice.
Well, that is true. I've had that discussion with... I have a couple of friends that our group knows through World of Warcraft, and they came down one time and was talking about, you know, their kid is, like, you know, smart and gets picked on a lot, and, you know, they were giving him the same, like, you know, don't worry, you'll be doing better than the bullies, this will all resolve, and I'm kind of like, no, you need to, like,
Yeah,
prepare
I mean, that
him
is never the right
for
answer.
some
The right answer is
difficulty.
never, like, it gets better.
Yeah.
Because it's dismissive.
Yeah.
And to the child, you're right, it gets better. Like, high school is just a fucked up environment.
Yes.
But to the child, that's their world. And, like, they're not seeing beyond that.
And it's also, it becomes like, no, everything doesn't just magically fix itself. Like, things don't magically get sane once you get your diploma.
Right.
But,
All right. Can you hand me that other console without knocking too much?
No. Yes, maybe.
All right.
There we go.
I've got to hear this story now.
Oh, yeah. Well, we're gonna have it. So,
Kick it off.